Good morning, everyone. We have here our second panel for the Day of the Climate Profession. And if you're joining now, this is a day to promote climate careers. And we have a series of partners for all over the world to show how the work is also related to climate change. The topic of today's panel is food and climate, a two-way relationship. And we have a very nice panel that have entrepreneurs, activists, and we are going to showcase their experience and what their organization are doing to make sure that we have food habits and agriculture that will make our climate more resilient as well. First, I would like to start with Shweta Sood. She's from the 50 by 40 Coalition, a coalition of organizations that are dedicated to promote the reduction of consumption of industrial animal products around the world by 50% by 2040. And she will talk a little more why is this important and how her background led her to work with this field. And she holds a postgraduate degree in English literature from the University of Delhi. And she was formed the Deputy Programs Director at the Federation of Indian Animal Protection Organizations, and built many initiatives in advocacy and research, established social grassroots networks across 60 cities in India. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It is an absolute pleasure to be here. And I hope that anything that I have to share can be helpful to all the lovely people who will be listening to this. So as Cassia shared, my name is Shweta and I'm based out of India. I currently work with 50 by 40, which is an international coalition of many different organizations that are basically working together to solve the issue of food systems. And my background is very much in federative work. But I come from a strong animal rights background. So I was very motivated by the pain and suffering of animals. And I worked in that field for really long, about 7 years to be precise, ran a lot of national campaigns. And I felt that it was great, like the work that we were doing was great. But in some way, looking at it from the isolated viewpoint of animals was kind of hindering our own growth and the growth of the movement. And I think in that way, when we look at 50 by 40 and we look at the many different aspects through which food systems are related, it really shines a new light on this whole issue. Specifically also when we're speaking about food systems and how they're so intersectionally interrelated. So maybe I could actually just share a little bit on that and look at like food systems from like a few different lenses, just to see where we stand today and where we can go. If I'm rushing through things, just tell me. I'll try and speak slower, but I'm going to try and be a little fast. So essentially, what do our food systems look like today? Where do we stand in terms of, is my screen visible?
Yes, but can you put present in the,
sure.
in the top, it will be larger. Sure. Perfect, thank you.
Okay, right. So where do we stand today when we're looking at like the issue of food systems? I'm going to talk through like a few different aspects. First, let's speak about the aspect of people. So today, nearly 800 million people suffer from chronic hunger, which means that they don't get enough food to maintain an active lifestyle. At the same time, we have about 1.9 billion people who are overweight. If we do the math, that's approximately 1 hungry person for 3 overweight people. And these people who are overweight also suffer from like malnutrition and other nutritional deficiency diseases. So these are all complex and overlapping issues that we have within food systems. Where do food systems land from the perspective of land use? So approximately of 100% of the agricultural land, 77% of it is used to grow and feed purely livestock, which provides 17% of the calories and 33% of the protein supply. In stark comparison, we have 23% of agricultural land that is dedicated to growing crops such as like vegetables and plants. And that provides 83% of the calories and 67% of the global protein supply. This is especially interesting because A, we see that there's a mismatch in how we're using land. And B, we have this common myth that it is meat that provides protein to the world. And we can clearly see that 67% of the global protein supply is coming from like other crops such as plants and vegetables. So it's time to rethink how we think about food systems. And obviously, like the topic of discussion today is climate. So where do food systems stand with climate? And we'll talk about this more on the next slide, but approximately at least 14.5% of all greenhouse gas emissions come from food systems, especially the livestock sector. And if we look at the top 5 meat and dairy companies combined, then they have more greenhouse gas emissions than Exxon, Shell, or BP. Again, I think what this points at is that we need to look more at the interlinkages between climate change and food. Again, only 6 of these top 35 meat and dairy companies have any emission targets, and only 2 of those have actually pledged to cut down net emissions. The reason why I'm sort of sharing this is because there's a lot of pressure on the likes of Exxon and BP to shift to shift to renewable energy, to shift away from oil. But we don't see that same impetus when we talk about meat and dairy companies. So, and these emissions are only projected to increase because the amount we're producing and consuming is only going to increase in the times to come. Where do we stand today from a climate and funding perspective? So like I said, livestock production accounts for at least 14.5% of all greenhouse gas emissions. And it is projected to account for up to 81% by 2050 if production continues unabated. By rough estimates, about 436 billion is spent worldwide every year through governments, through private sector, through civil society to mitigate climate change impact. However, less than 1% of that, which is less than 4 billion, is spent on shifting diets away from resource-intensive animal products. What this means is that at least for 14.5% of the problem, we're funding 1% of the solution. So we again see this mismatch, and we see that there's a lot of potential that plant-rich diets have and food production can have to address climate change, but we need to maybe think about it more smartly and differently. So how do food systems look today, and where do we stand today? Well, things don't look so good, but can we do better? Yes, we can. Through a study by the World Resources Institute, if the world's 2 billion high consumers cut their meat and dairy consumption by just 40%, that would save the land 2 times the size of India. And I'm in India, trust me, it's a big country. This would also save 168 billion tons of emissions, which was 3 times the total amount of emissions in 2009. So clearly we see like the potential of reducing animal protein, but we also see that an equitable approach in this is really important. We're placing the onus on countries that have historically high consumption and not on countries that would actually benefit from some kind of an increase in production and consumption simply because they suffer from more malnutrition and nutritional deficiency. Because we are speaking on the day of the Climate Day for Professionals, it also has a potential for many, many better jobs. A recent study that just came out from the Interdevelopmental Bank and ILO said that if we were actually to transition to a net zero economy, that would produce about 23.5 million new jobs, 19 million of which would be in the plant-based sector, which means that a just transition, especially in Latin America, would mean like transitioning away from meat-heavy diets. So really interesting, like from the point of view of creation of more jobs and where we see more people being employed maybe by 2030 and 2040. So this is essentially what 50 by 40 does. We're a collective impact organization. We work to produce and consume food more sustainably. And there are a few initiatives that I wanted to speak about that are worth giving a shout out to. One of which is 50 by 40's Global South Leadership Program. This is a pilot program. It is yet to run its first course. But as someone who's from the Global South and is very keen to work on the issue of food systems, I've always felt like there are a few lacunas that exist within the food systems. One of which is that we now see production intensification really rising in the Global South. So we've obviously seen it peak in countries like America and Europe, but now we see like the McDonald's of the world coming to India, Asia, Africa, etc., and really increasing per capita consumption. That's one reason. The second reason is that even though there is so much knowledge and so much capacity for leadership in the Global South, we don't see enough opportunities to sort of amplify that leadership within global sectors. So for these two reasons, we are creating a Global South Leadership Program that will place, train, and network about 10 people from 10 different countries in organizations that are leading work on food systems. If you have any questions about this, it'll be interesting to talk about that. And the last thing that I want to speak about is 50 by 40's Global Engagement Summit, which is coming up this 8th to 10th of December. Registrations are free of cost and but donation based, and registrations are live now, so please do take a look. In particular, what we hope to do with the Global Engagement Summit is really get together the best and brightest minds, many of which are sitting in this room right now, and talk about the issues of food systems and see how we can create better solutions. One big target within that is youth empowerment, because we feel like youth is where the power is, and they're the ones who are leading the food systems change movement. And it'll be interesting to see how we can amplify their voice even more and more. So that was really it. I hope that was useful, and I'm around for any questions, and thank you so much.
Thank you. We are going to share all this information on our website. So if you're watching now, you can register and you can see the link later on the Youth Climate Leaders website. I would like to pass now to Sara Roversi, which herself is also an entrepreneur and founder of the Future Food Institute, an inclusive network and inspirational platform that is sparking exponential positive change in the global food system in an entrepreneurial way. Sara herself is an entrepreneur, thought leader, and disruptor in the food ecosystem. She's a seasoned growth expert, and she works with globally recognized high-profile think tanks on setting the agenda for the sustainable food industry. Future Food Institute also has a series of trainings. So if you are watching us now, for sure, if you like this topic, the first thing to do is to get more knowledge. So Sara can also mention a little bit of that.
Thank you so much, Cassia. I'm super glad to reconnect with you and your amazing community. It's been pretty interesting how we get connected and how much all our missions are aligned. So, and thank you so much for the incredible introduction you made about us and our ecosystem. I'm going to share with you a little bit what we are doing now and why actually I started. Before I started Future Food Institute, actually, I was just an entrepreneur working in the food sector without having a deep understanding about what's the impact actually that all the people involved in the food system are making every single day in the world. Once I get into a global network, that was the G20 of the young entrepreneurs back 7 years ago, I started seeing that every task force working in the different topics, the major challenges the world is facing, anyway, we're connected with food. We're including food and we're actually telling to the food industry, you are wrong, you are killing the world, you are damaging the world. And so I said, okay, I have to change the way I'm doing business, and I have to do something to support the industry, support the innovators, to change the way we are producing food. So I'm going to share with you just some slide to give you an idea of what we do. And let's talk about food. The thing that was fascinating me the most at the beginning was to think which are all the different values of food. Rituals, identities, religion, stories, inclusion, the first way we get in touch with the society. Everything is connected with food. We celebrate things through food. We share all our culture through food, and food is like a language. Everyone is represented by food, and food is deeply connected with our identity. But we all know also the impact that food is doing on the health of people and the health of the planet. And this picture, I think, presents the two biggest paradoxes we're facing. We have more people dying for overnutrition and malnutrition in one sense. Still, we have 800 million people dying for hunger that don't have access to food. On the other hand, we also know that the 37% of the global impacts made are made by our habit consumption, what we eat and how we eat, what we choose when we go to the grocery store and we have to choose in the shelves what to buy. And so we decided to start to answer to the question, how might we feed 10 billion people by 2050? This has been the major question. And then the other numbers that frustrate me a lot is the 70% of the world living just in hyper-urbanized centers in the future. and thinking about how the cities are going to change in the future, because we're going to have cities that are going to grow so much with a very young population and others that need to face different kind of social issues. And so I started wondering, what's going to be the role of food? What's going to be the role of players, innovators, how we're going to distribute food, how we're going to make accessible the good food, the food coming from the farmers, the one that are protecting biodiversity and so on, also in hyper-urbanized centers like that. And so we started trying to see how we were facing the issue. And during the pandemic, I think we had all the chance to redesign the set of priorities facing food. And I'm sharing with you this pyramid just because this has been the process I did during the pandemic, really seeing everywhere in the world this process happening, everyone getting frustrated about getting access to food and seeing the chains completely disrupted and farmers disconnected with the cities. Then we started thinking about the food we're eating. Is it safe? Can I trust who's producing this food? And this, of course, created tons of other related issues, the growing of the use of plastic and so on. And then we started wondering, where are we producing food? Can we afford to live with a more local food, protecting our crops, our biodiversity, and so on? Many questions and many challenges every single day. But this connects us to what we started to do 7 years ago. So mapping out everywhere in the world, the major technologies, industries, thought leaders, scientists, innovators that actually started to redesign the world of food, going on and starting thinking about how might we began to interact with the environment in a different way, which are the innovations that can help to farm in a different way, to grow food in a different way, to fish in a different way, protecting the planet, and going on the entire food chain. So how we transform the food, how we make it accessible and safe for all, which is the power of the nutrients we are getting, which are the new source of proteins that are zero impact proteins, which are the lifestyle that are changing through technology and the knowledge, how we spread the knowledge, because in the last decades, we get influenced so much by digital tools and influencers, and sometimes we don't have the access to the knowledge of scientists, and the right and the wrong informations are spread much faster. So we started identifying which are the KPIs and how much food and the food industry is connected with the entire society. The role the food is playing and how much is interconnected with all the sustainable development goals. Working with governments and institutions, UN agencies, and going on with the broader society, families, producers, cultural institutions, schools, and the industry. Really trying to identify which are the new KPIs, which are the new platforms, which are the new metrics, because nobody knows that we have a huge power in our head, that is food. And we have the choice to take the right or the wrong decision multiple times a day. So to do that, we didn't decide to start a startup or a single project, but we created an ecosystem that is based on three main pillars. That is the knowledge pillar with our academy, our master's program, our boot camps, the school programs, and so on. The community pillar that is made by physical living lab that now are very struggled in this time in history, but also digital platform running marathons and so on, and the R&D team. The R&D team that is the team that is supporting the industry. So if you're looking for new jobs, industries now needs those kind of competencies. Industries needs innovators and youth that have the climate responsibility and are climate conscious, that can help the industry to take the right decisions. How we do it? We do it with a network that is spread all around the world, our alumni and our network of innovators. And we do it joining forces with organizations like the Youth Climate Leader Network, as well as the United Nations and different agencies and NGOs that everywhere in the world now are trying to join forces to change the way we're doing things. Next year is going to be a very important year. It's going to be a very important year because the United Nations announced the UN Food System Summit. There's going to be a G20, a COP26 calling for youth in UK and in Italy as well. So we need to raise voices and help to facilitate this global conversation. And we're doing it through also our programs. And I invite you all to join. A program just started on November 20th and is the Climate Shapers Bootcamp. We would love to have you join us, participate to the open conversations. There are people from all over the world, experts, industry leaders, young scientists, also super young climate activists. Thank you so much, Cassia. And I'm really happy to welcome your incredible community to join our global conversations.
Thank you so much, Sara. Now I will pass the word to Stephen Michael, CEO and founder of Worth the Health Foods from Philippines. So we are going to change a little bit the continent. Worth the Health Foods produce plant-based, nutritious and delicious food products made from valorized bumper crops, sourced directly from local growers, processed to minimize waste and having a long shelf life. Stephen is passionate about using bioscience and entrepreneurship to create social impact. He believes the purpose of food innovation is to create meaningful progress in sustainable food systems, and the key to Asian food security is plant-based. Thank you so much, Stephen, for being with us today.
Hi, thank you, Cassia, for that wonderful introduction. So yeah, my name is Stephen. I'm the founder and CEO of Worth the Health Foods. We are the first plant-based food innovation company from the Philippines. And our mission is to lead in Asia's transition to a more plant-based diet, plant-based lifestyle. As you know, Asia, and especially the Philippines, is one of the most biodiverse regions in the world. But it's also very much developing. And so our demand for animal meat is ever increasing. And it's just destroying hundreds and hundreds of hectares of forest every year. Just last week, we suffered from one of the worst flooding in over a decade because of a big typhoon, and the watersheds have been denuded from trees because of this livestock industry. So, and as one of the most biodiverse countries in the world, the Philippines is also a source for a lot of plant-based alternative proteins. And we think that the way to convince people to reduce their meat consumption is to make plant-based meat. So we are at that stage. So we make, there is also a lack of plant-based Filipino favorites. So our company produces plant-based pantry staples like mung bean-based ground meat, jackfruit, corned beef, Filipino-style corned beef. We also have a hot dog product coming up, which will surely be a crowd favorite. So our mission is to make it easier for people to transition to a more plant-based lifestyle by replacing their meat consumption. We aim to fill every household with plant-based Filipino favorites, and I hope you can join us in that mission. We are a very young company, and I think we are just one of the many plant-based meat companies coming up, and we believe that we all need to work together, like thousands of entrepreneurs, thousands of companies, alternative protein companies, to make a dent in this world and save our environment. That's a quick introduction. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Before I go to the next speaker, I just want to know a little more. How was the process for you? Because you're also a young person that is like ahead of this organization, and you were recommended by a partner of ours, Thought for Food, which we'll speak a few hours from now. So if you like this topic, wait a little bit, that we are going to talk more about it in a few hours at the Day of the Climate Professional. So how was the process of creating a company from scratch at such a young age?
I think it's our passion to change the world that will really trigger that motivation to put up enterprises, and I think the young people are the most energetic and the most idealistic, such that we are at the right age to make a change in the world. It is our time to change the world, and you know, in our 20s or 30s, that is the time when we are most energetic, and you know, what better way to use that energy than to change the world.
Thank you so much. And if you are interested, if you're watching us, and if you want to launch a company on food, you can learn more about those organizations that are with us today. And also later on with Thought for Food, they can talk about their boot camp for entrepreneurs. And I hope to see next year more food entrepreneurs here at the Day of the Climate Professional. And talking about entrepreneurship, I would like now to pass the word to Gustavo Bottino, co-founder of Soil Vegan Café. Gustavo has over 20 years of experience in marketing and corporate development at food and beverage hallmarks like Domino's, Pizza, Subway, and retail powerhouses. He's an entrepreneur, and in 2011, he founded BOS Barbecue, and he's also the co-founder and managing director of Soil Vegan Café, a hospitality company based in Amsterdam with a focus on creating delicious plant-based food for a better future. Thank you, Gustavo, for being with us today.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the opportunity to share my experience, Cassia, and of course my vision, and hopefully inspire a little bit of the youth and the future entrepreneurs in this complicated food system that we have to deal with and that we have to change. Well, the introduction was pretty thorough and very good. I am indeed an entrepreneur for 10 years before an executive career in large multinationals. You mentioned that. My career as an entrepreneur in the food service world started with Boss Barbecue, which was the first American style barbecue concept to operate in Brazil. So it's a casual dining concept that opened in 2011. Later on, I also founded an events company, which is called Churrascada, which stands for, simply put, Big Barbecue Festival. And it really is one of the largest food festivals in the world right now. It takes place in São Paulo once a year and hosts over 10,000 people and chefs from all over the world. And while everything in the food service and meat world, what I was pretty much involved with, was happening, in 2014, we faced in São Paulo, I was still living there at the time, the hydric crisis, serious, severe drought in São Paulo for 2 years. We essentially had to change our habits dramatically. And literally at that moment, I thought something had to be done about the climate. And after a little bit of research, thanks to the amazing work that scientists all over the world are doing, we got access to the information concerning the impact of livestock and climate change and sustainability. And that really started bothering me. However, I did have a big issue at the time. I hated vegan food. So I thought there could be some other people with the same kind of impulse to do something about it, but really concerned about losing the joy of eating, the joy of delicious food. And I put together this concept that's really made for expansion. It's called Soil Vegan Café. It's based in Amsterdam, and it's essentially a vegan restaurant for vegans, of course, but also for non-vegans. So pretty much the same way Stephen believes his products can bring more people into this movement. That's what I want to do on the retail side.
And now, like, we are going to pass a little bit to Felipe Villela, who will talk from the other side of food, like the production, or in this case, the harvest of food. He's the co-founder of Renature, a company based in Netherlands that supports farmers and corporates in the transition to regenerative agroforestry. They have the ambitious goal of restoring 1 million hectares worldwide through agroforestry. And Felipe himself is passionate about this topic, and he's an inspirational speaker. And his ambition is to prove that we can feed 16 billion people instead of 9 billion by 2050 if we use regenerative agroforestry systems. So Felipe, the floor is yours, and we are really happy to have you with us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cassia, youth climate leaders, and everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. A month ago, I was with Gustavo having his excellent barbecue in his home, and I can tell you that his food is delicious. You guys should try.
Thank you.
And aside from that, Cassia and I and Renature and Youth Climate Leaders has been a partner for a long time. Well, since the birth of Youth Climate Leaders and Renature. So it's a huge pleasure to be speaking today. I will share my screen to go through a few slides. I am Felipe. I'm from Brazil, founder of Renature, and our goal is to make regenerative agriculture mainstream and agroforestry mainstream. So this is my mom and my dad. My mom is a freak nature passionate, always hugging these trees. And my dad is a banker, a businessman, always looking at financials. So I guess I got a bit of both. And coming from my mom's side, has been always working in organic agriculture in Limeira in Brazil. So I was always passionate about agriculture, about nature, but also from my dad's side in the financials. And being passionate for nature, I thought, hey, I really would like to travel the world and get to know how the beauty of of nature is out there. So I went to Africa to do a volunteer work with conservation project with elephants in Namibia. And then I got back to Brazil and I thought, hey, I don't even know my home country. How is that possible? How I can, go to Africa, not even gone to Amazon rainforest yet. So I decided to go to the Amazon by car from the south of Brazil. And I was amazed by how the beauty of this rainforest and the people living in it is stunning. I was learning from indigenous communities on how to produce food, fibers, and medicine from the forest. And this was extraordinary, inspiring. But when I left the Amazon, I saw this massive deforestation for soybean, cattle, and logging industries. And I was asking myself, why do we need to destroy nature to produce major commodities for industries? Is there any other way we can actually produce such commodities in a way that it can preserve the forest and that it can include nature? So after that, I start seeing the impact that this has on farmers and communities. I started searching for farmers and hearing their stories and listening to their, their ways of approaching these challenges they're facing in the Amazon. And I start searching for knowledge about agroforestry, about regenerative agriculture, ways that it can include nature. And I met this incredible person called Ernst Gitsch, which is a Swiss farmer and scientist working on a 500 hectares cocoa agroforestry system in Brazil. And he's the one who successfully showed that it's profitable and it's impactful at the same time to produce agroforestry systems and using cocoa as a keystone species for that. And Ernst has also showed that we can actually influence in microclimates. So not only depends so much in irrigation that today's conventional agriculture is, but we can actually influence in the microclimate to bring rain for our own farms. So how incredible is that you can influence in the ecosystem services so much? So then we started Renature. I went to Holland and I met this co-founder partner, Marco de Boer. Oh, and basically we started Renature 3 years ago. And that's where I met Cassia, and we became this partners between Youth Climate Leaders and Renature. But so we all know that today conventional agriculture is threatening our food security. And we all know that agriculture contributes to 1/4 of greenhouse gases. And we also know that it's threatening our rainforest. We're losing millions of hectares of rainforest in Brazil, in Borneo, due to agriculture. So regenerative agriculture and agroforestry includes nature. We can use an agriculture system that is mimicking natural processes. And it has several benefits, and we are focusing on these SDGs. So we want to ensure that we can feed 10 million farmers and communities using no hunger SDG, also potentially increase yields and diversifying farmers' income through the SDG 8. Also mitigate climate change through sequestering 200 million tons of CO2. Our goal is to regenerate 1 million hectares of farmland and also stimulate cross-sector sourcing from the SDG 17th. And that's my favorite one. Why? Because companies can actually use blended finance instruments to finance projects while they can actually harvest from the same land regenerated. For example of that is Natura is growing palm oil that is shading cocoa, and the palm oil goes for the cosmetics industry while the cocoa goes to the chocolate industry. So you can bring two different organizations to regenerate land, and they can partner up to reach the targets of regeneration. Why regenerative instead of sustainable? Sustainability is not enough. Sustainability is about being carbon neutral. It's about decreasing amount of pesticides and herbicides and all these agrochemicals. And regenerative is about maximizing positive impact instead of neutralizing negative impact. Regenerative is about restoring soil. It's about using natural resources to fertilize your farm. It's about becoming carbon positive. So that's why regeneration is a destination. So the core 5 principles of regenerative agroforestry is always keep your soil covered. Just like us humans need to use sunscreen to protect from the sun, the soil acts as the same. Soil needs this biomass layer to protect them from the sun so that the soil doesn't dry out and desertify that land. Secondly is increase crops diversification. In order to successfully not need any kind of pesticides or any kind of volatility in the commodity prices, we need to diversify crops to ensure farmers food security and also different income streams. So food security as well, so farmers can grow food from their own land. Knowledge exchange, because regenerative agriculture is a process-based agriculture, is a knowledge-intensive agriculture instead of a input-based agriculture like conventional monoculture is. So it demands more knowledge exchange. And economic profitability. If the system is not economically viable, farmers will not replicate the system. Then a typical regenerative agriculture system, it grows food for the farmers. So it has to have food security elements in the design process. Secondly, it has to cover biomass species to replace external inputs. Just like conventional monoculture systems is dependent on agrochemicals like fertilizers, pesticides, the organic industry is just making the same mistake. It's also making farmers dependent on external inputs. If we can actually grow, species like grasses and trees that can replace such inputs. And then third and last, economic resilience. If there's no major cash crop or target commodity, the system will not prove to be successful. So touching a bit on the carbon sequestration, because we're also talking about climate change, right? So regenerative agroforestry system can sequester around 18 to 20 tons per hectare per year, not taking soil in consideration, just taking superficial layer. With soil is around 20 plus, so it's almost double because soil has a lot of carbon as well. While in conventional system, you're actually emitting more than sequestering. So there's a huge gap between such systems. Aside from carbon, because everyone is talking about carbon as well, we are at Renature looking at from an ecosystem service perspective. So we're also measuring biodiversity increase on farms. So this is an example of how complexity in a farm can actually reach more biodiversity impact. And we have been using bioacoustics, which is this equipment that you install in the farm, and you can actually monitor the amount of birds, the amount of insects, the amount of flies in the farm. And the biodiversity will become an asset, just like carbon is today. Impact investors and banks, they're already interested in financing projects that increase biodiversity. So this is the most cost-effective and scalable way of measuring biodiversity. And the good news is it's scalable. It's not like only, like a small thing, regenerative agriculture and agroforestry. It can be done over scale. This is a mechanized system being done in Brazil. And there's always this question, but what's the risk of investing in regenerative agriculture and agroforestry? And we often ask back, what's the risk of not investing in regenerative agriculture and agroforestry? So there's articles on Forbes and World Economic Forum already showing that yield started decreasing, climate and resilience in the crops start affecting, soil has started degrading. So all these effects on farm start happening if you don't invest in it. So that's why banks are now seeing the importance of changing. And we're losing 80 billion euros of investment going on conventional agriculture practices that, yes, shows to be less costly in the beginning because it's not diversifying the system, so it's less costly, but the profits start decreasing because of climate and resilience, while regenerative systems start increasing profits over time because of the climate resilience aspects. So our goal is to reach 1 million hectares by 2030 and also reach 10 million farmers impacted through food security. So this is our target strategy. So our position is to help farmers and communities on the ground, but also connect to research centers like Wagner University and other agricultural universities, but also connect with buyers and traders. So organizations that need suppliers, we also support them. So the model starts from a model farm to a model school and a transition package. So these are all target commodities we are focusing because they are the highest commodities responsible for deforestation worldwide. So there's a demand coming from farmers and communities to start a model farm, which means a demonstration plot. It's like a pilot project that the farmer or the company we're working with, they see the regenerative agroforestry in practice. And if they are happy with it and they want to scale that, we expand that to a model school. And the model school is an education center where you can host farmers to replicate this model farm for all their production units. So it's the scaling phase of the model farm. And then the third and last is the transition package. Just like farmers receive their conventional package with saying how much pesticides, fertilizer they need to use, we give this package, which is a package that receives both knowledge and also funding for them to go into this transition phase. So there's also growing demand from financial institutions, and these are a few organizations that we're working with to develop such services. So a model farm consists, as an example of this, is a coffee model farm we do in Brazil. So the coffee is being shaded by banana, African mahogany, macadamia, and it has also peanuts as a biomass ground cover. And the model school is an education center. This is in Indonesia with 500 farmers. They're learning about pepper agroforestry systems. So we also measure impact through remote sensing. So we make sure that we can estimate amount of vegetation growth, carbon and sequestration and things like that. And instead of doing carbon offsetting, we try to push companies to do insetting, because we see a lot of companies saying, hey, let's plant trees randomly worldwide just to, tack our sustainability targets. But the sustainability team of these companies, they don't even talk to their purchasing team, which is responsible for all their own suppliers of, for example, cotton. So they're planting trees somewhere in the world instead of improving their own supply chain. So we are pushing the insetting program for organizations to impact their own business instead of like externalizing their bad image. So these are KPIs. I'm not gonna talk about them, but just like indicators we are prioritizing in the work we're doing and where we're working. So we are mostly focused on Global South, Brazil, Africa, Southeast Indonesia, Southeast Asia, and we're based in Holland. So this is an example of a coffee system. This is an example of a cattle system in Brazil. We're working with in Brazil to avoid deforestation. This is a palm oil system in Malaysia, and a cocoa system as well in Ivory Coast we're working with. And yeah, these are our partners we're working with. So youth climate leaders since the beginning, and some of other partners as well we're working lately. And yeah, let's join us to regenerate nature. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Felipe. I think everything that you have in common, and like maybe is the goal of this day, is that you need people to help you with your campaigns, with your companies, and we hope to be a partner on that. If you're watching us now, you can check on our website all these links and events. We are sharing the link there, so you can share with friends, you can register. And we are also sharing hundreds of jobs, some of which will be related to food and agriculture. And at the same time, and you have the link here at the end of this video, we are fundraising to increase our platform to showcase even more green jobs, because we believe that after the pandemic, we have to not go back to the normal, because normal, and you're seeing with the food system, which we didn't have time to talk, but the pandemic itself is related to the food systems. The normal will not bring us into a better place. We have to go further. We have to go to a better world, and we have this chance to restoring our societies with this new paradigm. So I'm really happy to have you all here. We have very little time now, but we can still do one question for each participant, and if you can answer like a short and straightforward. First to Shweta. What do we need to reduce production and consumption of industrial animal products around the world by 50% before 2040? What would be a game changer for this?
Thank you. That's an interesting question. I think there are a few game changers. I can't name one. I think the biggest change is like a holistic change in food systems, which is like transitioning away from this very intensive system that we have right now to this circular food economy that is regenerative, like we've sort of heard today. So I think that is one thing. The second thing is divesting away from that same kind of industrial agriculture that we fund and subsidize a lot. And then getting these multinational development banks to take the onus and to shift towards better food economies. The third, of course, is youth. Working with the youth, sort of amplifying their voice, amplifying their power. And the fourth would be, from my perspective, focusing more on food systems in the global south, particularly because we see there are so many regenerative systems that already exist there. There are solutions that already exist there. So those would be my top four. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now going back to Sara, what tips do you have for our viewers that now want to transition to a climate career within the food sector?
So first of all, everyone should transition into a climate smart career in every sector. So I think that this is the first thing. Then to connect with the one that can make the biggest impact. At the beginning, I was making the decision to work just with the good ones, and I understood that I was not adding anything. So I think we can say, be brave and face the biggest one, the one that are making the biggest damage, and try to help them, because inside those big organizations, there are humans. And as soon as they understand what's the impact of their daily decisions, they can definitely be part of the chain.
Well, thank you so much. I think that's the spirit of this day. We hope next year to have all of them also negotiating with us and making this transition, because we need everyone to be carbon neutral by mid-century. And I think all of you have solutions that could be escalated to make this happen. And now going with Steven, what was or is your main challenge as a food entrepreneur?
So, there's I mean, as an entrepreneur, there's a lot of challenges every time. And I think it's all about people and relationships. We have to, I think at the end of it all, entrepreneurship or businesses are about people. And you have to connect, you have to relate with all kinds of people to support your vision. And once you get people to support your vision and to work with you, I think that makes it a lot more easier to push for your vision, to push for your mission. So yeah, I think the main challenges would be people, and I think overcoming it would also be an awesome opportunity to work with great people.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of great people want to work with you and with all these organizations that are with us today. And now for Gustavo Bottino, how do you see mainstream food companies and restaurants changing towards more sustainable food systems?
Well, first, I believe it's really through the big companies, and I'm kind of echoing here Sarah's opinion. I think it's really important that we all work together and we help the big companies that have the means, the resources. And when I talk about resources, I talk about resources in each and every way, from R&D to production capacity, to distribution capacity, to communication capacity, all throughout the world. So I do see with a very good eye the fact that a lot of companies right now are joining the plant-based movement in the food sector, including companies that are traditionally more focused in the meat world. And I think it's absolutely fundamental that they do this change, because I think they have a lot of power to convince a lot of people. And as for restaurants, I think it's there's a long way to go, but because people do have to learn how to cook delicious vegan food, and not all chefs are trained to do that. So I'm very hopeful that culinary schools start introducing more plant-based themes in their curriculums, as well as the big companies who will, and companies like Stephens, who will supply restaurants and consumers with great quality products that people won't even remember that meat isn't in their plates.
That's fantastic, and we hope maybe next year we will have more people showcasing how to do this live, because I'm sure a lot of our viewers want to improve their plant-based recipes, and we will go for it. And final question for Felipe: what do you think someone who wants to work on food and climate can do now, after they watch this video, to get closer to a dream job in the sector?
Perfect. Yeah, I think that's, this question is always relates for me to something that it can touch the person personally. So I think one of the ways for me is to get like also a bit of a ground experience on what you are actually defeating. So if I'm defeating like agroforestry or regenerative agriculture is the solution, why not go into the field and have a immersive experience with the farmer or with the community, putting our hands in the soil and seeing from your own eyes, the solution in the field. And I think that's something that it's always sparks a lot of inspiration and gives you a lot of insights on what's your role in that ecosystem of increasing impact and changing the world. So I think, going to the field and trying to see what you are actually defending, I think that's the best way to start, finding your own path in this journey.
Thank you so much, Felipe. And I think maybe in many countries you cannot do this right now, but you can follow us with the Day of the Climate Professional. And and at least know the organizations you would like to do as soon as you can. We are going to have...
So for next year, Youth Climate Leaders and Renature will organize immersive experience either in the Amazon or somewhere for you guys, to invite you guys to put your hands in the soil as well.
Oh, definitely, and we want to do something together in Netherlands. We are really looking forward to have a hub there. I think it's a country very important for this transition, and we have great partners like you around. So we are coming to an end of this amazing panel, but we will have like many hours ahead to talk about waste and climate finance, how to work in international organizations, what people hiring for climate change are looking for, a series of events. So you can see on our website the full agenda. And we know that we have people from all over the world watching. So sometimes the time is not the best for you, but don't worry. Everything will be recorded and you can watch later. You can share with friends. The main idea of the Day of the Climate Professional is to make this huge campaign that we need to invest on green jobs, on climate careers. And the future will be related to this topic. So if you are a student or if you want to do a career change, this is the time to prepare yourself. Thank you so much for being with us today.
There's so much bad news about our planet, and so warm. The truth is, I've given up. This is the story of a simple solution, a way to heal our planet. The solution's right under our feet, and it's as old as dirt.
All of our soils that are under chemical conventional agriculture are almost completely devoid of microorganisms.
Modern agriculture was not designed for the betterment of the soil. Fossil fuels are by no means the only thing that is causing climate change. When we damage soils, carbon goes back to the atmosphere. But when we destroy soil, it releases carbon dioxide.
Biosequestration is using plants, trees, and techniques of grazing and farming to capture carbon and store it in the soil.
We can fix a lot of our climate issues to bring the CO2 down into a living plant and put it back into the soil where it belongs.
Plants working with soil microorganisms, it seems too simple.
Healthy soils lead to a healthy plant, healthy human, healthy climate.
There could be a way to eat food that heals the planet.
The problem isn't the animal. The problem is where the animals are at.
How do we take waste and repurpose and reuse it, because it's really not waste? The poop has to stay in the loop.
Compost is just one of a suite of soil-based carbon capture solutions.
We know how to do it, and if we continue to scale over 30 years, we can reverse global warming.
We can get the Earth back to the Garden of Eden that it once was by regeneration. To see biodiversity return to a place that was completely devastated, that gives me hope.
Our health and the health of our planet are connected.
If you look over here, my neighbor's land that has been chemical fallow, then you look over at our paddock, you have a diversity of different plant species. Which model do you want your food to be produced from? The answer is pretty simple to me.
I'll make you a deal. I won't give up.